Hello? Alright, it's good. Welcome back to the stream. Today we are going to be doing more controller support. The controller support is actually going pretty well. There's just like a bunch of little things that I need to fix with it, which I have written down here. So yeah, we're just trying to get controller support into a good spot, get everything working very nicely. And so yeah, hopefully it'll be done sometime soon, maybe by the end of the week or this weekend. And done meaning like good enough for now. because I'm going to need to do a bunch of UI stuff, like wherever there's like mouse prompts or whatever, I probably need to put little controller prompts, and there may need to be some UI changes that need to happen, but basically what I'm trying to avoid is I'm trying to avoid like redesigning basically anything for controller. It should just be plug and play, you know, like you plug the controller in, boom, you can control the game, and then you unplug it and you go back to mouse and keyboard without anything like fundamentally changing about the UI layout or anything. So I think that's going pretty good, but I'll show you the current state of it in just a second. Before we get into it, I want to remind everyone that Alchemortis is available for wishlisting, and not only is it available for wishlisting, but the Patreon playtest is live right now, so you can head on over to Patreon. If you subscribe, you will get instant access to the playtest. Also, if you subscribe to this top tier for at least 1 month, I will send you an Alchemortis Steam key when the game launches, and your name will be included in the in-game Alchemortis credits as a thank you for supporting development. But as a reminder, if you want to try the current version of the playtest, you do not have to subscribe on Patreon. There will be a public playtest period with the same build, so you're not missing anything, and that will be happening in a couple of days here. So I'll be announcing that basically the day it launches. So keep an eye on the Discord, keep an eye on the email list. You can join those things from the links in the description below. And another way you could support me is by purchasing one of my Udemy courses. Those will teach you how to build games in the Godot engine. Alrighty, let's get started. Why am I so dark? Why is it so dark in here? Good morning, Ninja Link. Hello, Emerson. Welcome, welcome. Snupbill, thank you for the IDR 10,000. That's always appreciated. Thank you. With the message yummers. Welcome back, Snupbill. Hello, D. Warnock. Welcome back. Good to see you. Cleats of Glory. Good to see you again. Welcome. Yummers, yeah. $15 go burr, yeah. I think it's a pretty good deal. I mean, you get to support me. You don't have to buy the game again on Steam. You get your name immortalized in the next big indie hit of the century. I don't know. Seems like a pretty good deal to me. Hello, Jay Hard. Good morning. Oh, okay. I'm a little bit tired this morning, but that's okay. Do I need to rebuild some stuff? I'm like bouncing around between 3 different branches, so I've got the playtest branch, and I've got the master branch, and then I've got the controller branch. Anytime the playtest branch is updated, I gotta cherry pick those changes into master, and then I gotta rebase controller support on master. It's like, I don't know, poor Godot here is getting all confused, but that's okay. I really don't think that I'm gonna be doing any more playtest branch changes. Like, there are obviously still outstanding bugs and whatnot, but sort of what I like to do for the playtest is like fix any of the very noticeable or very game impacting bugs and address those issues first, and then whatever other bugs come up, I just log them and I'll fix them for a future version. And the main reason for that is that it just gets very unwieldy to have like 2 parallel branches, because I have all the new features and new content that I'll be working on in the master branch, and then every change that I make in the playtest branch creates a possibility of like a merge conflict with master, and then it gets too divergent over time, so I try to like limit how many changes I do to the playtest. And I also try to limit my playtest changes to things that I know would cleanly merge into master, so I don't have to deal with it. But anyway, but I like to keep the playtest branches around, because then I know, like, you know, what the playtest was like at that moment in time, or like that, retain that history of like what version was launched for this playtest, so on and so forth. 100% on the Alchemortis indie hit. Hello, Simon William Taylor. Welcome. Good afternoon. Okay, let me plug in my controller. And I'll show you what we've got going on here. Okay, so I've got the controller here. I showed this in the Discord, but I've got the displacement working properly with controller. And it was a little bit tricky. This actually took quite a bit of time because when you're doing the mouse hover for the displacement, it is possible in certain situations for the displacement that is generated. Actually, this may not be a problem anymore. Yeah, okay, so like it's possible for me to try to place the card in a position where it would like overlap. You see how like this imp here is overlapping with the paladin and the soul there. And that's normal, that's to be expected, right? Because when you're dragging an item with the mouse, it's like it should follow your mouse. So even if there's overlaps, it's like that's fine, right? Like you just want to kind of drop it where you can. But with a controller, those kinds of overlaps are not acceptable, right? So as I'm moving an item while I'm dragging with the controller, it always needs to end up in a spot where it could actually be placed. Because if I end up like overlapping something with this item, it would feel very weird. So I had to update the code a little bit. Basically what happens now is that when I press the direction, the D-pad in a certain direction, it tries to move as many times as possible until it finds a valid displacement or until it finds an empty spot. So instead of moving one cell at a time, it will actually skip forward and apply the displacements one at a time until it finds a valid one. And if it doesn't find a valid displacement, like I'm pressing up right here, it can't displace upward because there's now, arguably, it should be able to displace upward because that would just entail a swap. So I'm sure there's some improvements that I can make to this. Maybe I should actually fix that. It should be able to displace upward by simply swapping the positions. For some reason, my displacement is not handling that. Why is that not working? That should be able to do that. Uh-oh. Well, anyway. Why does the left and right swap work, but the... Oh, wait, the up and down swap is working now. Huh? Oh, I see. What in the heck? I actually don't know what's going on here. Oh. Oh, I know what's going on. It can't... Okay, so this is a little bit confusing. When I start a board displacement, I capture the initial state of the board. So when I grab this imp, the positions of all the other items on the board are being stored in an object. And so as I go and apply displacements, the board state is actually being updated. So like these cards are actually being moved to those spots. It's not just a visual thing, like the data for those cards is actually changing. But I get into a weird situation where like multiple chains of displacements cannot happen. So like every time I move the item, the original state of the board is restored. And then the displacement is reapplied and reanimated. And so I could end up in situations where, like, if my placement would rely upon multiple chains of displacements, it doesn't work. Why doesn't that work? So you see how I can't drag this imp here? Because that would require multiple chains of displacements. It would require this item to move downward, and that would also require this item to move downward. But the way that the displacement currently works is that it only moves the overlapping cards to the next available position that it can find. And so the reason why this placement doesn't work is because it would have to move that item down, and then it would have to move that item down as well. But that just doesn't, it's not supported by my displacement system. So when I grab this with the controller and I go here and go here and I try to press up, that is effectively the same thing as taking the mouse and trying to place it here, and that also doesn't work. Now you can make an argument that maybe that should work, because there's obviously room to push everything down and put the item here. But I guess that's just not supported by my system. But I think I should be able to make that improvement. It's just, I guess it's not in scope for the controller work specifically. I think the core problem is like, so it's almost like a, I think it's technically a breadth first search. So it gets all of the overlapping cards one at a time, and then it tries to move them to the next available position. But if those cards that are being moved would also require other cards to be displaced, it doesn't work. I think that's the core problem. Like it doesn't do a chain of detection like, oh, if I'm trying to move this card and it would also overlap with another card, then also try to move that card. It doesn't move like chains of items. It basically is just very simple. It just tries to move the items that you're overlapping immediately to the next available free spaces. And that's why situations like that don't work. But there has to be a way to make that improvement. Anyway, that's not what we're going to focus on right now. Good old black magic, yeah. The other thing that's kind of tricky about this is like, this is a very core system, right? Like the whole board system and the position of items on the board is very, very, it's core to the game, which means that like I cannot tolerate any bugs here. Because like if a board ends up in an invalid state, there's basically no way to recover from that. So a lot of the trickiness of like this, displacement algorithm is that it always needs to be able to, number one, validate that the state that's created is actually valid. And number two, it needs to always be able to fall back to the last known valid state. And that just kind of makes it a little bit trickier to do like long chains of things, right? Because then I need to like store all the intermediary states so that I can always recover back to like a good state. So it's a little bit tricky, but that's all right. We'll figure it out. Fix or leave. I'm going to leave it for now, but maybe I can make that improvement. I did make an improvement to this. I think I made an improvement to this. I think it's a little bit nicer, like it more often creates the space that you need, because previously it would just move things, but you weren't guaranteed that the moves would create like a free space for your item. So it could like apply the movement to things, but then like you still can't place it because this item is overlapping something else. So I did change it where the displacement will only report a success if it actually ends up creating enough space for your item. And if it doesn't, then it just doesn't do any displacement. So it still it feels slightly better, but I think there's more I can do with it. That's an impressive mug, yeah, thank you. Welcome to the stream. Infinity01, hello, welcome. All right, so anyway, there are some more pressing controller issues here. So firstly, my controller is disappearing, or my cursor is disappearing rather, when I try to move things. So we want to fix that, but also I can move larger items outside of the board here. So I want to fix that first. Sounds like a good use case for recursion. Yeah. The problem is that I don't know if that's going to be a good idea. I mean, I think my boards are small enough such that recursion wouldn't really necessarily be a problem. But there's a lot happening when the board state changes. From like a technical standpoint. Like so many updates are happening like whenever a card changes positions, and so I guess there's an open question of like if I recursed and did like 100 different attempts for even just like a moderately sized board, is that going to create like problems? Maybe not, but it's just something I have to look into, that's all. I don't know for sure. My components in my game got a lot cleaner after I followed one of your videos. Thanks. Yeah, you're welcome. Glad to help. Okay, anyway, let's go to the controller drag and drop. So this one is responsible for trying to move, drag card in direction. So try place card at position, relative occupied cells, can place card at position. I'm gonna make a new method here. Let's do public bool can card fit at position. Base card, vector 2i position. And this is basically just gonna be the same logic here, except the only thing that I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna check the valid grid cells. I don't care about the occupied cells. So basically this check is just, does the card and all of the cells that it has fit on the board if I were to try to place it at this position? And so now what I can do is I can do try move dragged card in direction. So I've got the search cell here. So I can actually do a very basic, I can just do a very basic check here. If not, mouse over board dot board inventory component dot can card fit at position. We're going to do dragging card dot base card, and we're going to do position at search cell. If not, we're just going to return null. So we're not even going to try to do any of this displacement if we know that the position we're moving to is not going to work. So let's see what that does. Hello, Mel's, welcome. Hello, Smile XFO. Did you replace not equals with a Unicode character? They're called font ligatures. And font ligatures are essentially combining pairs or triplets of characters into something that looks like a single character. Some people don't like font ligatures. I think it makes the code look nice because then you get like, you get like your not equals, which looks very nice. There's also not equals for JavaScript if you're doing that. You also have like greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. What else? You also have like arrows. So you've got like arrow functions. I think it looks very nice. I think it makes the code look a little bit less noisy. But some people don't like it, which I understand. Okay. Okay, so this seems to be working now. Let's move some stuff. I cannot move to the cell board, but I can use the bumper buttons to move an item across the boards. Now this is going to be a problem because if I don't have, see what I mean? If I go back here, it tries to snap it to 0, 0 by default, which is not good. And if I were to put an item here, and then I try to move this over, it's going to try to snap there, and now it's like broken. Like I literally can't do anything. So there's like weird little situations like that need to be handled. And part of it is like it's kind of a difficult or a challenging technical problem. But the other part of it is like a lot of it is a UX problem. Like, what would the player expect to happen if they tried to move a 2x2 item over to their combat board while it's full, right? Like, there's one option where I could just like skip straight over to the alchemy board in that case, but then the player might feel like, why didn't it go to the combat board, right? The other option is I could play like a little fail animation if I try to move it over here, but then it's like the player has no way to move it over to the alchemy board then. So yeah, there's like a lot of the difficulty of implementing this controller support is like, what is the actual user experience like? Like how do I make this as intuitively as possible? And there's so many like different weird cases that you just don't have when you're doing a mouse. So it's a little bit tricksy, but that's okay. We'll fix it. Anyway, the important thing is I can't move these things off the board anymore. So this is how we're doing it. I mean, it's just like, just fix one major problem at a time, and then eventually all the problems will be fixed. I hate font ligatures, but I understand some people like them. But then again, I use a completely white font with no coloring for programming, so it might just be me. There you go. Welcome to Quantum Blaze. Your game has such a great use of darkness. Reminds me of an old Batman animated series I grew up with. Thank you, I appreciate that. So the game has been compared to Batman, to Loop Hero, to Diablo. He nailed the art for this game. Thank you, I appreciate that. That makes me feel very good. Now we just need to nail the execution of the game. Need to nail the experience. Oh, man. All right, what's the next thing I should fix here? So I kind of want to work on a little bit of the visual stuff. Like, I think it would be nice to start adding some feedback, and also there's a bug where I can't use the controller until I click once into the game, which is weird. I don't know if maybe that's just a focus issue, like a window focus issue. I don't know. But anyway, I would like to play like a fail animation when I try to move things outside the board. I still have the problem, I can't move things to the cell board, so that's a little bit unfortunate. The cursor is disappearing. That's actually a major problem because I set the cursor to invisible when there's no focusable elements available. But, which is fine in the most part, because like if there's nothing on screen for you to select with a controller, then having just like a floating cursor doesn't make any sense, right? So I hide the cursor when there are no focusable elements on screen. It just cleans it up a little bit. The problem though is that when I'm dragging cards, it disables focusability of all control elements in the game. But I need to change the cursor into a different mode where it like enters a drag mode. And so the cursor probably needs to stay in its grab animation and also move to the center of mass of the item while I'm moving it. And then of course the other issue is that when focus is returned, the cursor is just jumping to like a random focusable element when I probably want it to jump immediately to the item that you just placed or the item that you failed placing. So this is what I mean. There's like a ton of like little things to do. As far as the cursor though, I actually don't know what the best way to handle that is. So let's take a look. I don't know why this window set min size is here. We're going to move that here. So I think let me think about this. I probably just need to know, I think I can just connect. I can just connect to card mouse events manager dot drag connect to drag began. Card mouse events manager dot connect to drag ended. Okay. So let's just try something simple here first. We'll do private bool is dragging. Now the thing is I need to make sure not to change the mouse behavior. Is dragging equals true. Is dragging equals false. It may be a good idea to split these out. So private void update cursor for controller. And then we'll do private void update cursor for mouse. Let's just put like a float delta here so I have that. So we want to do update cursor for controller here, float delta. Was root visible? I think I can do this. Okay, so update cursor for controller. Root.visible is equal to is focus control valid or is dragging. I'm going to move this into the mouse. And then in here, we're going to say, I'll probably just do the same thing in here. We want to grab is grabbing. So cursor click dot visible is equal to is grabbing or is dragging. And cursor dot visible is equal to not is grabbing and not is dragging. So we could probably is grabbing or equals is dragging. Cursor click is equal to is grabbing, and then cursor visible is equal to not is grabbing. Okay. So this will force the cursor to be visible. Now here, if is focused control valid, if the focus control is valid and we're not grabbing, no. This needs to be dragging. Were you dragging or were you rushing? In this case, we are dragging. So if we are dragging, then I need to change the root global position to be the same as the dragging card. How do I do that? Do I want to reference the mouse? I mean, it should be fine. Sorry, I just need to think about this for a little bit. Get global mouse position vector 2.0. Var center of mass offset is equal to game constants dot get card registry dot get center of mass. What I need to pass in here, occupied cells. So this would be, let's just store the dragon card. Dragon card is not equal to null, question mark, dragon card dot, where is this get center of mass used here? Absolute occupied cells, okay. So card definition resource, base card, absolute occupied cells. Otherwise we will just default to 0. And then this would be plus center of mass offset. I have no idea if that's going to work, but we will try it. That's some psycho, no offense. What? What is? I don't know. It sounds more like Stardew Valley to me. Not being able to use a controller is a focus issue. Making video games is hard. It is, yeah. Are you playing PoE today? Oh my gosh. I was looking like a week ago. I was like, yes, I'm going to play Path of Exile 2 with the major update. And a bunch of stuff came up this week regarding just like, you know, the typical things that come up in life, vehicle problems and all that stuff. And I just completely forgot about it. So thank you for reminding me. I may actually do that. I have to be careful not to get too sucked in though, because like I have to work on the game. But yeah, I will actually... Should I get that updated right now? Is this going to incriminate me? Is this going to show like some naughty games in here? I'm just kidding. I don't have any naughty games. Like these are the games I have installed right now. You can use it as opposition research if you want. Okay. Anyway, you think you can highlight the thing once you start dragging the items, unless you're already planning to? Highlight the thing. What do you mean? Like just put like a white border around the card? Hello, Light Tiramisu, welcome back. Clickertail, good to see you. Fork, hello, welcome to the stream. I've been lurking for a couple of streams the past 2 weeks on my phone while on commute. Now catching live at my desk for the first time. Wanted to say hello and thanks for the insight. Yeah, you're welcome. Always glad to have you. We love our lurkers, but we also love the lurkers that convert into non-lurkers, for sure. I've been thinking to write a tool that can reserialize GUI scenes into a simpler format that could later be used with the Universal Visual Server renderer, strictly for non-interactive complex scenes. That sounds like it could be useful. So you're envisioning like you create a very complex layout that's static with like control nodes and whatnot, and then that gets converted into just a very straightforward script that sets everything up in the rendering server for you, so you don't have the massive like node overhead. That sounds pretty interesting, actually. I'd be interesting for something similar for like just regular scenes. Like it would be really nice if you could like define a rendering server scene where you can design it in the same way that you would a normal scene, but when it actually gets added to the game, it just uses the rendering server API to basically recreate that scene structure. That could be really useful too. Hello, Drufus, welcome. I'm playing 007. I'm playing the 007 pretty good. Somewhat. Like the actual patch will be in a couple hours. Okay, good. So I have time. Programming with no text coloring at all. Oh, I see. That's the psycho thing you were talking about. Probably gouge my eyes out after a while, yeah. Not a C# dev. Why are so many of your variable declarations var types and not concrete types? Is that a Godot thing? No, C# has a lot of syntactic sugar. So you can use the var keyword when the right-hand side of the operation is a known type. So in this case, the center mass offset, it knows that this has to be a vector 2 because I'm returning a vector 2 from here, and I'm also returning a vector 2 from here. So it's able to infer that this is a vector 2 type. So you don't have to, like, I don't have to do, like, bool was root visible. Like, it just infers the type automatically. And I generally tend to prefer that. I think it looks clean to me. I mean, look, I'm the kind of person, I like JavaScript. I like all of the syntactic sugar that comes with JavaScript, especially, like, the object destructuring and all that stuff. So I like to, like, I like the structure that C# gives me, and to the extent that I can get that structure without so much verbosity in terms of just like the boilerplate that you need to write for like just defining variables and stuff, that's good with me. Because like, you know, like there's very rarely a situation where I have to go, oh, what's this type? Like I know that the center mass offset is a vector 2. I know the dragon card is a card rendering server. I know that card mouse events is an instance of card mouse events manager. I know that was root visible or is focus control valid is a bool. Like I know all that stuff. And if there is a case where I don't know, I could just hover over this and it tells me what the type is, right? So it's like the type doesn't need to be baked into the text itself. The variable names often are a clear indicator of what it is. And in the case where I'm not exactly sure what it is, the ID tells me right there, right? So I like it. I think it keeps the verbosity down a little bit. It allows me to be verbose in the ways that that I want to be verbose in. You know what I mean? Anyway, I have no idea if this is going to work, so we're going to try it out. Hello, Wuius, welcome. Oh, you were talking about me. I've been thinking about the server stuff quite a bit for 3D scenes as well. If you've tried to make an open world game, I'd imagine you have to get everything static out of scene tree, because node overhead in a big game would be massive. Yeah, I just got a comment on my rendering server video today. Somebody's making a... Oh, what's this? Okay, so it's not going to work. Somebody's making a Terraria-like game where they had to basically use the rendering server to render the world. And that makes sense to me. Like, I think, you know, your first intuition for, like, a Terraria-like game is like, oh, I can just use tile sets and tile maps and whatnot. The problem is creating the tile maps and creating the tile maps, even if you're using a chunking system, which you should be for that kind of game. For some reason, that's a very, very heavy operation in Godot. Like, I tried to do a Terraria-esque prototype one time, and it was like, even with really small chunk sizes, it was just not fast at all. And so the way you'd have to do it is you'd have to actually construct a like 2D mesh and, you know, map the textures onto it based on your chunk data. It's the same fundamental approach that other voxel games like Minecraft take, is like you have your data representation of all of your voxels in your chunk, and then you construct a mesh, like the minimally visible mesh from that data structure. And then of course you have to like rebuild the mesh when a block changes and so on and so forth. So yeah, that would be like a classic like use case of the rendering server, I bet. Because you probably want to just create the mesh through the rendering server and like apply the textures to the mesh from the rendering server. Highlight with the controller thingy, and once you mention mouse, hide somewhere, and then put anything in the box item thingy. Gotcha. I'm not very money smart with wording most of the time. That's all right. Is this your first game? It is not my first game. It is very, very, very far removed from my first game. I've made probably dozens of games. I mean, not probably dozens of games. I have made dozens of games since I first started when I was like 14 years old. This isn't even the first game that I've released on Steam. So, yeah, it's definitely not my first game. It's not even close to my first game. Hello, Safi. Why notification isn't underscore signifying it's private, but uppercase means it's public? Just curious. I think that's just a quirk of C#. So the underscore is just a convention that means private. So like whenever you see an underscore in GDScript, that's not actually a private method. Like you can still call it. It's just a convention that notes to the developer that this is not supposed to be called outside of this class, right? But one of the quirks about C# is like the ready method is private in GDScript because you don't want to override it from outside of the script that is actually relevant. And you don't want to call it from outside the script where it's actually relevant. Like it should never be the case that you ever need to call ready from another script inside of a different one. But the problem is, in C#, I guess it just needs to have public accessibility for whatever reason. This is like a Godot implementation detail. So it's a public method that you should never call that's marked with underscore ready. That's just one of those weird things that kind of annoys me too. I would much rather this be like protected modifier, but I'm sure there's some kind of reason why they didn't do that. I'm sure there's like an implementation detail of why this has to be public, but anyway. Yeah, it's just a little bit quirky, that's all. My game actually has chunks with random generation. I think I have to get smart and actually do the server implementation with static imposters getting replaced with nodes only on interaction. But I've been doing everything else possible so far. Yeah, nice. Yeah, it's tough problems. So for some reason, this card mouse events manager is not ready by the time this one is ready. Why is that happening? I really don't understand that. That should be ready. Why is that null? So it's null because this is being called first for some reason. Let's look at my auto loads. Oh. It's because the card mouse events manager is not an auto load. Right. Does that make sense? I'm sure there's a reason why I did it that way. It's only present in Run Manager and Main Menu. Well, there's a number of ways around this. One way around this is to just make a global signal for whenever mouse drag and mouse drag end happen. As a matter of fact, I may already have methods for that, but I'm not sure. So let's see. No. So I could just make those global events and emit them from the card mouse events manager. The other thing I can do is I can create a public delegate void like card mouse events manager created event handler like this. And then in my card mouse events manager, emit card mouse events manager created there. And then go to my cursor. Do all this. I mean, I don't really think this is like a super ideal solution here, but given that this is not an auto load and the cursor is, my only options are to send the signal each individual signal that I'm interested in from the card mouse events manager through the global like events bus, I guess you could call it. Or I could just emit one global event for when a card mouse events manager has entered like the tree, and then I can just connect to whatever signals I want to there. I think that's probably the better approach, because then if like you could see this signal list like ballooning as I need more things, and I don't need to like add more global signals, I can just fill out that method there. So I think that's okay. I think that's fine. All right, let's see what happens here now. It's not working. Now there's probably an order of operations issue. Maybe not though. Maybe my logic is just wrong. Let's see if this is even being hit down here. Okay, it is being hit, so that's good. So I just have a problem with my logic then. Hello, 2SocksX. Welcome. Good to see you. Welcome to the stream. Oops. Let me try this. So both of those are true. That is way wrong. Oh, yeah, this is wrong. Oh, I'm doing this wrong. This needs to be this needs to be global position, not the get global mouse position, because the mouse is like, the mouse could be anywhere. The mouse could be anywhere on screen because the cursor position does not match the mouse position when I'm using a controller, obviously. So I want to get the card's global position, not the global mouse position. Right. Okay, alrighty. So I know what the problem is here. I'm not multiplying that center of mass offset by the tile size. So I just need to multiply that out by the tile size, and then we should be fine. Okay. So the problem is every time I lose, or every time I drop the item, the cursor snaps to the next available focusable element. So I need to basically re-grab the focus of the item I just dropped. And I think that should be the case whether I cancel it or not. Like, I think like whenever a drag and drop operation finishes, the mouse the controller cursor should always step to, or snap to rather, the item that I was just interacting with. So let's see if I can figure that out. But first, show cursor during card drag. All right, I'm going to take a quick 3-minute break, and when I come back, we're just going to keep finding issues with the controller support and fixing them as we go. So like I said, I think all of the hard problems of the controller support are solved. Like, I have a way of managing focus states across the game. I've got those focus context boundaries, which I talked about yesterday, which allow me to like prune or filter a tree down to only the subtree of focusable elements. The drag and drop with the controller is largely working outside of some like minor weird issues. So from this point onward, it's mostly just going to be a matter of like ironing out all the UX issues and making sure that all the interactions feel good. But I think at this point, like, I have no major like outstanding like unknowns about how to go about doing controller support. Like, I think the path here is very straightforward now. I just need to get everything addressed. So we're almost there. But anyway, I will be back in just 3 minutes and we'll continue on. All right, I'm back. Just asking, why don't you use GDScript? I like the structure that C# gives me. That's all. feels like I can make more complex systems in C# compared to GDScript, or at least it's easier to do so. All right. And drag. So I think I just want to put the code in here. Oh no. Focus manager disable all focus is called here. Where is enable all focus called? Oh, here. Oh, okay. Oh, don't tell me that this does not, okay, so if drag data equals null return, if failed drop, we enable mouse areas, and then drag data dot card dot, let's do this. Focus manager dot drag. Try grab focus for drag data dot card. Does that work? Let me think. Refocus deferred. Well, we'll just try grab focus, I guess. Let's see what that does. Pretty tough to write a lot of code without proper namespacing. That's true too. Hello, Abo. Welcome back. Good to see you. It did not work. Silly me for thinking that it would work. I'm wondering if I should, so when refocus gets called, this basically just attempts to grab the first focus that it should match. So I think what I should do in here actually is I should say if focus candidates dot contains last focused control. So let's do this. If is instance, let's just do is control focusable, last focused control, and that control is within the focus candidates. We are just going to do last focus control dot grab focus, and we'll return. Maybe that's just the one-shot fix that I need, because the last focus control is always going to be the last card that I selected to drag, it disables all the focusable elements in the entire tree. When I complete the drag operation, all of the focusable elements that can be re-enabled get re-enabled. That triggers a refocus, which will look at the focus candidates. The focus candidates is basically a hash set that represents only the candidates that are in context to be focused. So for context, you know, I could have 400 focusable elements in the tree, but depending on like, you know, depending on like if I have those focus context boundaries, these focus context boundaries are nodes that I can place in the tree that restrict the pool of focusable candidates to only candidates that are descendants of the parent of the context boundary. In other words, every focusable candidate that is a descendant, well, I think I basically, any focusable candidate that has the context boundary's parent as an ancestor is what gets filtered down to. So it's just a way of like pruning the tree so that I'm only considering certain groups of focusable elements at a time. So I think that this is going to work, because what I'm doing is I'm checking if the last focus control is currently in the candidate's context. And then if it is, I can just try to grab that focus. So I'm pretty sure, like I'm guaranteed basically that this grab focus is going to succeed if is control focusable and focus candidates contains last focus control. If these two conditions pass, that basically means that the last focus control that we had, I've just been talking for a long time, and let me guess. On GUI focus changed. Oh, right. So the quirk about this one is that this on GUI focus changed. So this get viewport GUI focus changed. This does not emit when a control node loses focus. So this will actually tell me what the absolute last focused control is. Anyway, that's a long-winded way of saying I think it will work, but maybe not. Love your art. Thank you, Cleats of Glory. I appreciate that. All right, so move this guy over. Boom. Oh, look at that. It works. Oh my goodness. And then I can move this over, and then it just re-snaps to the card. Oh, beautiful. Now I'm realizing that there's no lerping. So I actually don't need this. We can get rid of this here. I'm realizing that there's no lerping on the cursor. Let me think about this. There's no lerping. Update cursor for controller. Why is mouse a second class citizen? This needs to go first. Okay. Controller is the second class citizen now. Root global position. So I want to store this. Let's do var target position is equal to this. And then we'll do root global position is equal to root.globalposition.lerp to target position 1f minus mathf.exp negative controller smoothing times delta. Okay. Good programmer mantra. I think it will work, but maybe not, along with works on my box. Yeah, true. It's true. Lerping. Slightly off topic, what is your hair routine? That's like the second time I've got this question. I literally just have like the whatever, like the Dove men's like 2-in-1 shampoo conditioner, like, and I just wash my hair every day. That's it. I'm literally basic, like I don't, it's barely a routine. It's barely a routine. I have the 33-in-1 hair conditioner, shampoo, motor oil, deodorant, floss, toothpaste. Okay. There we go. All right, that feels pretty good to me. And it always, so the reason I have this card in here is because it's an odd shaped one, so I just want to make sure that the center of mass is working. Now the real test I'm going to want to do is add item tapeworm. Let's see if this one works. Oh, it does. Look at that. So the problem is, like, yeah, I had to do the center mass thing because, like, if I just said, oh, move the cursor to the center of the card, there is no center of the tapeworm, right? So the mouse would be floating way out here. So I actually have to do like a center of mass calculation where I basically like try to get like where the concentration of the cells are. It's kind of like a center of mass thing. And then apply the cursor offset based on that. Now the tooltips are annoying me because the tooltips are not changing position, which is a little bit not fun. So that's probably going to be one of the next things that we tackle. I don't like that that settings keeps getting focused either. Oh, I found an issue. I can't select the Morel. That's not good. Wonder why that's skipping. Yeah, actually, that's not good. That's not good. I can't select the Morel. It skips it every time. Oh, here's another like weird UX thing, I guess. Interesting. Shoot. It's probably the same problem with the tapeworm. If I move this down here, I probably can't select the candle now. Oh no, I can. Wait, so is it just a problem with the gnome? Wait a minute, why couldn't I? I guess I should recreate the exact situation here. Oh yeah, I can skip. Oh, I skipped the gnome too. So the problem is that I think what it's doing, my find next best focus code, is it's just taking, let me think. I mean, I guess I could look at the code, but I think it's taking the top left position of the control. How is that working? I almost wonder if I should just make every individual cell of every card selectable. Because right now it's just, yeah, I should probably make every individual cell of every card selectable. That would fix the problem. Right now it's just so my cards. Wait, is that even true? Oh no, my cards only have one control associated with them. Oh, fudge. So how am I gonna do this? So I have one control and I need to go from that control to the next. I think I have to make every cell selectable, honestly. I think I just need to figure out a way to make every cell selectable inside of an item. Fudge. Remember when I said that most of the hard problems were solved? Turns out that was a lie. Now, interestingly, I can select them if I press right on the D-pad, but if I press up, it doesn't work. And right on the D-pad would not have worked for that booster because there was something to the right. So there was literally no way of selecting that item. This is annoying too. It keeps going to the settings up there. Immovable monolith, boom. Well, we're getting there, slowly but surely. Okay. Let me respond to this text really quick, sorry. Okay. He does have beautiful hair. Thank you. Thank you to my lovely wife. Hello, Tan Talking. Welcome, welcome. I think my hair type is similar to you because I need to wash my hair every day also. Do you use styling product or leave it in conditioner? No, I don't. I don't. I don't. My wife can testify that my my routine is very, 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 very basic. Hitbox and Y sort could be. Make sure that no part of the GNOME hitbox is messed up. No, it's not. It's not possible for the GNOME hitbox to be messed up because the way that it works under the hood is the card rendering server is actually just a bounding box. So the card rendering server extends control. These are all the things that render the cards. It extends control. The control is the bounding box around the item, which means that it's a square or a rectangle. It doesn't perfectly form to the shape of the card. The way that I'm determining the shape of the card is I overrode this has point method. So I actually store a list of rect 2s, and each rect 2 represents a tile that the card occupies. And so to detect whether the mouse is inside of a card or not, I basically just check the given point against all of those rectangles and only return true if at least one rectangle has that point. Well, only one rectangle can have that point, right? So the control is just a bounding box, and then I filter out all of the mouse points to only those that are inside of the rectangle. So that's how I can get a situation like this, where if you were to imagine the tapeworm here, it has a 3x3 bounding box. Oh, sorry, I gotta take this call 1 second. Sorry, everyone. All right, sorry about that. So anyway, what was I saying? So there's a 3x3 bounding box here around the tapeworm. And the reason why that bounding box doesn't intercept the mouse events when I'm hovering over the gnome and the candle, actually this is like a perfect example because the gnome has a 2x2 bounding box as well. So the reason why those square controls are not intercepting the mouse events as I try to hover over these other nested items here is precisely because this has point is basically telling Godot that even though the mouse is inside of the bounding box, it should not be considered as being inside of the control. So this is actually a really, really useful method, and I only found out about it recently. you can override the has point on any control to control precisely like how the mouse enter, mouse exit behavior for the signal, and for GUI input handling as well, how that works. So you can essentially define irregular shapes inside of a control that is rectangular by overriding this has point. And I'm actually doing the same thing for the clickable control. My clickable controls, which are basically the things that power everything that's clickable in the game, these can actually have polygonal click areas. And it's the same concept, right? It's like you have the rectangular bounding box control, but then I define a polygonal area that like masks the clickable area. And then all I need to do is just make sure that the point that's coming in is actually inside of the polygon. And there you go. You can have an irregularly shaped clickable area. So yeah. So anyway, all of that is to say, I think this focus thing is going to be a little bit tricky. Probably do individual. Why does using a controller put the tooltips to the right? I just haven't I haven't done any of the tooltip work for the controller support yet. I'm half bald. That's good. Hello, Massive Aggressive. Welcome. What is a for each? A for each is just a syntactic sugar way of iterating over a collection. So typically you do like a for int for loop where you iterate over all the indices by just incrementing an index counter until you reach the end of the elements. But if what you want to do is you actually just want to take each element out of the collection and do something with that element, you can use for each. So for each var focus priority in this collection, basically this collection creates an IEnumerable, so an enumerable object of focus priority components. And then I say, for every focus priority component in that collection, do this. This is functionally equivalent to doing like, you know, for int I equals 0, I is less than blah, 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 I plus plus, then focus priority is equal to all focus priority components at index I. Just an easier way of doing that. Okay. So what am I going to do about this? Does C# support web build? No, not in Godot 4, unfortunately. So let's take a look at find best focus and direction. So how is this actually working? Get global. Okay, so it's actually using the midpoint. So it's actually using the midpoint. So I'm almost wondering, this doesn't make sense to me actually. So this find best focus and direction, this is getting the center point of the currently focused control. So it's getting the origin plus the size divided by 2. So that's like the center point of it. And then it's iterating over all of the focus candidates. It's doing some basic filtering. Then it looks at the candidate's center point, subtracts the current center from it, wait, am I doing this wrong? No, I guess not. No. This is just returning an adjusted vector that can be compared with the direction. Perpendicular squared, this is just like a scoring, this is like a detail of the scoring algorithm, because like if you're like moving up on the D-pad, there may be something that's like closer to the control, so such that you want to focus that one. So there's a what is the word? There are competing interests here, right? It's like when you press up on the D-pad, there may be some controls that are like perfectly up, right? And then there may be some controls that are like at a 30-degree angle, but up. And so if you matched on just like, if you found the best focus based on just the direction, how well it aligns with the direction, what could end up happening is that you have a perfectly aligned control that's like all the way at the top of the screen, and the thing that you're moving up from is all the way at the bottom. And so you just end up skipping everything and going straight to the top, right? So there has to be some kind of scoring based on distance where we actually favor the items that are closer, even if they are not perfectly aligned to the direction in which we're trying to grab focus. So if I consider that, so we've got the center point of the gnome here, and we've got the center point here. We've got the center point here. Now, wait a minute. Center point to center point is like a straight line. Center point to this point is a kind of a steep angle, I guess, but it's much closer. So I wonder if so this perpendicular penalty should control the score. I don't know if I need to turn this up or down though. Maybe I should turn it up. Let's see what happens. Don't you feel sometimes lost between scripts, or don't you forget what does that code do? Sometimes. I mean, I think that's normal. If you have a code base of any complexity, like, you know, you're going to have to reread it to understand what it's doing. But I've been working on this, like, these parts of the code for several days now, so I'm pretty familiar with how everything's working. But when I first started the controller support stuff and I went to the like the displacement, which moves all the cards around, it definitely took me a minute to like get back up to speed onto how the displacement was working. But now I have a very good understanding of how the displacement is working because I've been working on it for a while. And so a couple of months from now, I'm sure I'll forget it again. But I think that's just normal. I think it's like, I think it's basically impossible to keep every single detail about every single method in your head. My goal is just like, I want to at least know what the function does based on the name, even if I'm not exactly sure what the individual lines or individual steps are accomplishing. So perpendicular penalty is not what I wanted here. So let me actually set this up. So let's do tapeworm, debug. Let's do this. Tapeworm, gnome, candle. All right. Okay, so that's working. So the perpendicular penalty was just a little bit too high. Or no, perpendicular penalty of 10 works very well. Now the question is, does that break anything else? Yeah, so now here's a problem. I can't really... I'm having a hard time selecting that upgrade there. So... I don't know. I'm almost questioning if there's going to be... Let's turn this back to 5. I'm actually going to put that seed back because I want to test that case specifically. So what I could do is I could actually change the perpendicular penalty based on what type of control we're hovering. So for normal controls, there's one way of doing it. But then for controls that are cards... I guess I'm still having trouble selecting this. Maybe what I should do actually is... Maybe the thing I should change actually to be more specific is the map nodes. Because I think if I... Maybe it should just follow the path. Like if I press left here... It should probably go to the reagent there. I mean, part of the problem is that I can focus things that are off screen here, which is really annoying. Yeah, like if I press left here, I'm expecting that to go to the booster, not to the item upgrade. I'm just going to play with these numbers. I don't know exactly what this number controls, but that's why we document in IT, we don't forget. I mean, in the ideal case, yes. I've actually seen more situations where the documentation gets started and then the app changes a bunch and the documentation doesn't get updated, and then everyone's confused like, wait, is the documentation out of date or not? Is this perpendicular penalty doing anything? Forgetting methods happens down to the readability of variables. Also comment your code, it helps. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I won't go on my anti-comment tirade again, it's all right. My regular viewers have heard that enough. That's a true reality, and in the end, life is too short to document, do accepted test in production. I like the YOLO mode of developing, just like ship it, you know? I can't focus this one. Okay, that's good. Did I fix it? Interesting. Let's go to the booster. It feels better, actually, with perpendicular penalty down to 1. I don't remember... Actually, you know what would be a good case for this? I can't see anything! Okay. The other problem, too, is like when I move the analog stick, it does multiple inputs at once, so you just zoom around the screen. Anyway, is this working? Like, this feels actually pretty reliable now. The only thing that's a little bit weird, I guess it makes sense. If I press left here, I go to the tapeworm, but I can go down, which is good. I can do this. Does this work very predictably? I think part of the problem is to like, I put the cursor just like 90% of the way down to the top right corner. But I'm almost wondering if like the cursor position should be more dynamic based on like which direction you pressed. Like it would almost make more sense if the cursor, instead of like, if I press left from the candle here, it would almost make more sense if the cursor went here instead of down here. So it's like following the direction that I went. Like these little UX things are going to be really interesting to solve. I'm gonna have to think about that. But as far as I can tell, the issue of being able to skip nodes or skip items has been fixed. So we'll just call it good, maybe. I need to prevent those from being focusable. I think that's one of the next things that I want to do. Also, we have debug issues. Oh, that's related to the speed controls. I gotta figure that out. Okay, well. Oh, I was gonna test this. I was gonna test the unlock screen. That's actually a good screen to test. I gotta bring up the menu. Unlocks. So let's see. Am I going to have problems seeing things? Oh, this is not right either. The mouse position is wrong for things like the scythe anyway. Yeah, I think there's just a lot of work that I need to do to get this feeling more intuitive. I think it's fine. Like, I'm having an okay time hitting the things that I want to hit. It's just like some situations like here, if I press down, I want to go to the spiderling, but it goes to the skull tower, and then I need to press right to go to the spiderling. So there's definitely a lot of room for improvement here. The core thing that I was worried about is like I could actually skip some things, which is not ideal. I gotta figure out scrolling and everything too. Ugh, fudge. Anyway, it's working better now. I want to work on some focus stuff though, because I don't like the fact that I can highlight things that are in the inventory when the inventory is closed. So we'll fix that. I played Resident Evil 2 and my GPU blew up. Oh, sorry to hear that. I have lots of comments in my code, especially block of code that I've abandoned, yeah. Comments fall to the same boat of docs. It can help if you're not changing the code a lot. Did you manually add those items to the grid, or is there an algorithm to fill all the empty spaces? There's an algorithm. There's an algorithm for sure. Because, like, I want to be in a situation in this game where when I add a new item to the game, which is going to be very common, that basically I just need to add the item and then every other system works. Like, as soon as I add the item, it gets pulled into the loot tables, it gets added to the unlock screen, like all of that stuff, right? Like, I just want to be able to create items, write their abilities, and then like send them off knowing that every system in the game is going to properly pick it up, which is pretty straightforward to do, because when I show the cards, show all cards, what this is doing is this is just iterating over all of the player cards in the card registry. And the card registry is something that runs when the game starts, which is basically like creating a database of all of the cards in the game. And it's segmenting out like which ones belong to the players, which one are bosses, which ones are enemies. And then I can get all of the IDs if I want. It also stores some metadata about like how the card should be positioned in certain cases. And then I expose a bunch of methods for like getting items based on ID. So I can like get my card definition resource, which is a custom resource, from the ID. And I can also create cards based on their IDs. So if I go to my card factory, the card factory can create cards from IDs. So create card from ID. This actually creates the card script that drives the logic from that. So if I go to card instance, card registry from ID, it looks up the ID in the constructors here. And this is also generated. This code is entirely purely generated. It's not something that I maintain manually. So when I add an item, it adds the ID entry to this dictionary, which maps the ID to that card's constructor for the logic. And then it also inserts the card definition resource for reference purposes in there. But yeah, it's all systematized. It's all data driven. So I can just add new cards, new items, and it just works. Any plans on updating Udemy courses to more recent versions of Godot? Hello, Desist Dawdling. My honest answer is that I hope I don't have to do anything else with the Udemy courses again. I know that's probably not something that you want to hear, but like, my hope is that Alchemortis becomes successful to the point where like, I don't need those other sources of income, because making courses and maintaining them and making sure they stay updated as the engine gets updated, it's like, it almost approaches the level of effort of like a full-time job. And that's just not what I want my job to be, you know? So I know that might be disappointing to hear if you're a fan of the courses, but I'm really hoping that I basically don't have to do Udemy courses in the future. My dad had an old GPU from 2009, does not support Forward Plus. I placed it in the PC. Uh-oh. Did you draw all the pixel art stuff? I did, yes. All the art in the game is 100% done by me. I can understand that the engine updates often. Thank you. Yeah. I'm sorry. I don't want to disappoint you, but I'm not saying that I won't ever do it. Like, you know, if Alchemortis is not that successful and I want some extra like side income, maybe I'll go and update the courses. If Alchemortis is really successful and I can just spend a bunch of time like just goofing off, then I may update the courses just for fun. It's one of those things where it's like, you know, it kind of depends on what happens. So I'm not gonna say never, but I'm not really in a position right now where I'm like, where that's a priority for me. Are you taking them down when they get less relevant? No, I won't take them down. I mean, the descriptions very clearly state what version of Godot they're for. And I also state that in the in like the intro video, which I believe I've made the first lesson of every one of my courses free to watch, so you can see like what version of Godot we're using. And then I also made like a dozen plus of the different lessons free to watch on Udemy. So people, I feel like people have enough information to discern, you know, if it's too out of date or if it like, you know, they can see on Udemy as well, I think, when the last time it was updated was. So like, I feel like they have enough information to make an informed choice. I'm not trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. I'm just, you know, all the information is there and it's up to that person, you know, if they want to, because, you know, maybe maybe Udemy will put my course on sale for like $3 and like people will say, well, it's a good quality course, even if it's in an old version of Godot, so I'll spend the $3, right? Like it's an option available to people for sure. It's just not, you know, not something that I'm super prioritizing. It will be successful, believe. Thank you, Taste of Ghoul. I appreciate that. Fair enough. Yeah. What theme do you use in VS Code? Dracula. I haven't checked them out yet. Do you remember which version you did them in? Looking at the description, it just says Godot 4. Sorry to shift track of this stream. I think it was Godot. The Vampire Survivors course is Godot, like the Godot 4.0. So like when Godot 4 first came out. And then the multiplayer course, I think it's Godot 4.2 or 4.3. It may even be 4.4. But maybe I'll do that. If it doesn't say the exact Godot version in the description, maybe I'll go and update that so people have that information. I thought I had put that in there, but maybe I didn't. You're welcome. If I had the time and necessary financial umbrella, I would probably do freeform YouTube tutorials that don't have the same sort of requirements. Yeah, and that's something that I'm interested in doing too, like a more informal, like, here's something interesting about Godot. Here's a very high level overview of like how to do the thing. And like, that's it, you know. Those videos are fun to make because they don't require as much effort and they're still valuable because people, a lot of times what people need is they just need to be shown something that they haven't seen before. And then they can take it from there, right? Like it clicks like how they can use that in their own projects and then they can go and like learn all the details about it, right? So a lot of times people just need the exposure to the thing or they need a concrete use case for the thing. And then once they understand that, they can run with it, right? So I definitely like making those kinds of videos because they're the perfect balance of like still being useful while also like being relatively low effort to make. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to be right back in just 3 minutes and we'll continue on with some of these issues. Okay, I'm back. Good morning, Zone. I'll just call you Zone. Anyone to network, don't be afraid to hit me. You're welcome to join the Discord if you want to connect with people. The link for that is below. Okay. What are we doing? I need to figure out, right, so I want to do some work with the context boundary. So if I go to my drawer UI, ooh, what is happening here? So I mentioned this in the Discord, but I went through with Claude's help all of my shaders, and I like dramatically improved the performance of all the shaders. Because Claude was convinced that one of the crashes that one of the playtesters experienced was due to too much branching in a couple of my shaders. So massively streamlined those, and then also streamlined my fade in, fade out shaders by using essentially lookup tables. I don't know if it's useful to go over this, but it's kind of cool. So when I want to do like a fade out of a sprite, again, my rule for the game is that every single color that gets rendered to the screen has to be one of the 8 colors in my palette. So when I want to fade something out, I can't just like change the transparency, right? And I also can't have intermediate colors. Like I can't do a smooth gradient shift from one color to another because that would violate the rule, right? And the rule is just like, it's just a self-imposed rule for stylistic reasons. But so any fade out and fade in shader needs to actually step through the relevant colors in the palette. And previously I was doing this with like a bunch of distance checks. And so like for every single pixel for every single fragment, which is basically every pixel in a texture, it would do a bunch of distance checks to figure out like what's the next color in the sequence. And it also had a bunch of branching and if conditionals and whatnot. And so what I did, and it was this is in partnership with Claude, but what I did is I instructed Claude to create lookup tables for this stuff instead. And then what we can do based on that is we can actually take a source color, so palette fade up, for example, or palette fade down. We can take a source color and a progress value. And progress represents, it's like a 0 to 1 float that represents how far along in the fade in or fade out we do. And what it does is it identifies the step index based on the progress, and then it fetches the color result from the array. So we have the fade down 64 element array here, and it's 64 elements because there's 8 steps for each of the 8 colors, right? And then each element in here maps to an index in this color palette here. So this is an 8 color palette with all of my color constants here, which are defined up here. And so what I do is I get the palette index. So get palette index, where is that? So I can take a source color and figure out which index it corresponds to in this array here. I don't have any syntax highlighting, so I'm losing where I'm at. Get palette index here. And this actually just uses the red channel of the color to determine what the index is. So it does this, I don't know the exact math behind it, but basically it just does this step. Oh, I guess this is returning either 0 or 1, depending on the R channel value. And so this is able to deduce, in basically a linear operation, what the index of a given source color is in the array. And then once we have that index, we can multiply that by 8 to get the row essentially in this fade up array. And then we do the step index, which again is influenced by the progress. So instead of having a bunch of branching conditionals and if statements and whatnot, now it's just like a straight lookup. We take the source color and we take the progress. We find where that source color starts in this 64 element array. And then we offset it by whatever index is determined by the progress. And then we just return that color. And so now I'm using this throughout the entirety of the game for anywhere where I'm doing these kind of color manipulations where I either need to step up or step down a color. It ends up being a lot more performant, and it like none of my shaders have branching now at all, because that was the main reason for all the branching. Did you draw all the pixel art stuff? Yes, I did. You must have missed. I answered your question previously, but I did. Yeah, all the art is drawn 100% by me. 100%. So anyway, let's do this. So I want a focus context boundary. Nope. Focus context boundary component. Now the interesting thing is I need to be able to disable and enable this dynamically. So let's do an export variable. So we have begin disabled. So then we go to rebuild scoped controls. We find the active boundary. For each of our boundary and all context boundaries, so we'll do public bool is disabled. Let's just make this actually the export variable. Is disabled, get private set. Yeah, that'll work better. So in my focus context boundary manager, for each of our boundary and all context boundaries dot where x not x dot is disabled. And then what I can do is I can do public bool public void disable. I do need to trigger a rebuild scoped controls when it gets disabled. So I think what I can do is I can actually just probably do a signal here. Public delegate void disabled state changed event handler. Emit signal disable state change is disabled. Public void enable is disabled equals false. Emit signal disabled state changed is disabled. So when we register the boundary, connect to disabled state change on boundary disabled state changed. And then we'll do bool is disabled, rebuild scoped controls deferred. And so this is going to filter out find active boundary. We're going to filter out any boundary that is disabled. Yeah, that should work. So I can start it as disabled if I want to. So now let's do this. Build that. Sorry, I'm a bit drunk. Just wanted to say that with the art like that and snappiness you have already, I feel like the game will be the next big hit with crazy headlines. NGL on God, I'm on the next pub and out of your hair. All right, well, enjoy your evening of drinking. That's always fun. But thank you, I really appreciate that. Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. And I hope it does half as well as you think it will do, because that would be amazing. But thank you. Hello, VoidBlit. You said you use Claude for that shader. How often do you use it and for what kind of tasks? Do you pay some subscription? So yeah, I use Claude quite heavily for shaders because shaders are just so unbelievably complex and they would take an enormous amount of time. Like refactoring all those shaders by hand would have taken me probably a week of effort. So I use Claude to do all the shaders. The other thing about the shaders too is that, so one of the main reasons why I write most of my gameplay code by hand is because I need to understand how all the gameplay systems work together. And I also don't trust Claude to like do proper fixes in a way that I would like it to be done. So that way, like the code doesn't turn into a spaghetti mess. So I don't like to write my gameplay code but with Claude because I need to have the understanding and I need to ensure that every new change is like building on top of existing architecture, or the architecture is being rebuilt or modified to support new things in the proper way. And I'm just not confident enough in like the LLMs that they'll be able to do that stuff without making a mess of it. But for something like a shader, which is a very like targeted thing that only like does one thing and doesn't have any like broader system implications and is also like incredibly hard to write, I like to use them for that because then it's like you can get it done way faster and more reliably in that case. And it just saves a bunch of time because I don't want to spend a week working on shaders. Like that doesn't sound fun at all. And the other thing that I've been doing using Claude for is like when I was doing bug fixes for the current playtest, what I was having Claude do is I was like, okay, I went in, I identified the bug myself, and I fixed the bug. And then I would open up Claude and I would say, okay, Claude, here's the issue that I'm trying to fix. Here's the solution that I put in place. Can you scan the code base to ensure that there will be like no unintended side effects to this? Like number one, can you give me like a sanity check that this does indeed fix the issue that I described? And number two, can you just like do a rough scan of the code base to make sure that there's not like some side effect or some other system that I wasn't thinking of when I applied this fix? And so that has been really useful as just like a validation tool to make sure that like, especially for like the playtest build, I don't want to break it because people can play it and I don't want them to like, I don't want to push a bad build that introduces more bugs or like causes something to break that shouldn't break. So that's been really good as like a second step to bug fixing, almost like a QA review, which is really useful. It gives me a lot more confidence when I'm pushing the bug fixes. But yeah, and then I use it for like brainstorming like architectural changes. Like if I have a tough problem, I'll be like, here's my problem. Here's the approaches that I'm thinking of taking. Can you analyze the strengths and weaknesses of each approach and also suggest other things if there's a different approach that can be taken? So anyway, those are all the ways that I use Claude. I think it's really useful as a tool. If you're not using it as a crutch and you're instead using it as like an augment to your capabilities, I think it's really, really powerful. But yeah, and I do pay a subscription, yes. I'm just paying the $20 a month or whatever for the pro subscription. Vibe coding is how you get a broken mess like the NVIDIA drivers. Using it for more specific tasks like validation or rubber ducky makes sense. Yeah, it is really, really good as a rubber duck, for sure. Really good. It's also good like sometimes I'll be questioning like if an algorithm is something that I want to implement, or like I'll be confused about a specific algorithm. And I can just like point it to the algorithm and say like, can you explain like step by step what this is doing? And that helps sometimes, but that's mostly for things like, I think I did it to help me reason through this like depth first search for the focus boundary contexts or focus context boundaries, which I don't need to go into in total detail, but there's a certain like precedence that these boundaries need to take, and that precedence is determined by like their position in the tree, but in a certain way. Like the deepest boundaries in the tree generally take precedence, but deepness is not the only thing to consider. The other thing to consider is like how far down the tree it is. So a context boundary could be like 10 layers deep in the tree, but if there's another boundary that comes like below in the tree and is not as deep, that one actually needs to take precedence over the one that's really deep. So it's kind of like there's this like double comparison kind of deal here, which was kind of hard to think about at first, so that was helpful. But anyway, when this drawer is toggled, emit inventory closed. So I need to get a reference to this. Private focus context boundary component. So I want to do focus context boundary component dot disable, and then emit inventory opened focus context boundary component dot enable. So hopefully what this will do is this will prevent me from being able to select items in the inventory when the inventory is closed. It did not work. Son of a biscuit. Why didn't that work? I wonder if my disabled state is not being set at this point. But it doesn't work even when I close and reopen the inventory either, so I don't know what's going on. I'm afraid of getting used to subscribe to one of those things because I'm afraid they'll inevitably raise prices or lower the amount of tokens you get. Since, as far as I know, these companies are losing a lot of money. I do hammer Gemini with questions on a free tier and haven't run out of tokens yet, though. Yeah, that's a way to do it. Is disabled is true. I wonder why this isn't working. I guess we'll retrace the logic here. Register boundary connects to disable state changed. Rebuild scoped controls deferred. Rebuild scoped controls. Active boundary is equal to find active boundary. Oh. There's a logical problem here. When I disable the boundary here, what I'm really trying to say is that anything that's within the purview of this boundary should not be selectable. But what I'm doing instead is I'm just straight up filtering out that boundary, so it's not even considered. So this is actually just, I'm just flat out wrong with how I approach this. When I disable a boundary, it's not that it needs to be skipped from consideration. It's that any control that is, like I said, in the purview of that boundary needs to be prevented from being selected. So that's actually Oh, that's actually a little bit trickier. How could I think it would be so simple? What am I, stupid? What am I, stupid? There's another thing too here, which is that, so this is correct. Find active boundary. So this is a boundary that is currently like supposed to grab focus. Now, wait a minute. How's boundary? I think I needed another hash set here. Hash set control disabled scoped excluded scoped controls, maybe? I think I maybe just need another method here. Private list, focus, context boundary component. Find excluded boundaries. Return all context boundaries dot where x dot is disabled. So let's build the excluded boundaries first. I do need to do this loop regardless, I think. Has boundary is equal to active boundary is not equal to null. If and then we're going to do var. Oh no, I'm going to need to do. So this returns all the excluded boundaries. Let's do var excluded boundary parents is equal to excluded boundaries dot get dot select x dot get parent where x is not equal to null to list. So we grab all the parents of the excluded boundaries. Maybe I actually don't need this excluded scoped controls. Maybe I just filter down this active scoped controls. If boundary parent is ancestor of control equals true, and not excluded boundary parents dot any x dot is ancestor of control. Is this has boundary used? Oh yeah. Rebuild if boundary. What is this? I feel like this is going to break. Maybe not. Anyway. So for each var control in all tree controls, if the active boundary parent is an ancestor of that control, and, oh wait, this is wrong. This is a little bit tricky. I think I might have to rewrite some of this. Because there could be no boundary. So I could do if boundary parent is equal to null, or yeah, see, this kind of like goes against what I was originally doing, which is that yeah, I'm just going to do this. Let's not do this all in the same one. I think it makes sense to split the data structures. So if the boundary parent is null, is not equal to null. So I can just go back to what I was doing. So we only add the control to the active scope controls if there actually is a boundary. But separately, we're going to say if excluded boundary parents dot any x dot is ancestor of control, we're going to add this to the excluded scoped controls here. So we're just going to build those two things separately, and then I need to clear this here. Excluded scoped controls dot clear. Okay. And then what I do in my focus manager here, we take this active scoped controls or all tree controls dot accept focus context boundary manager dot excluded scoped controls to hash set, whatever. It's a little bit messy, but that's all right. Maybe I'll fix it later. So is that logic correct? So the active scoped controls are the controls that are under the purview of an enabled boundary component. If there is no enabled boundary component, it falls back to all tree controls. So this is all of the controls that could potentially be focused in accordance with the boundary rules. But then we're going to take all of the elements out of the set that are within the purview of any focus boundaries that are disabled. I think that's correct, right? I think that's correct. YOLO. Let's go see. Hello, Monkey Software. Welcome. Hello, Chris Pratt. Welcome. The Chris Pratt. Oh my gosh, it's working. I can't select anything in the inventory, and then if I open this up, oh my gosh, I could do it. And if I close this, it goes back. Oh, it works. It works. That's a certified woo doggy moment. Okay. I think it's okay now. Do you see all the work I'm going through so that you guys have a nice experience on Steam Deck? I'm actually having fun with this though. Like this is so with Gunforged, it had controller support, but it was just very basic, right? It was just managing like the focus neighbors and stuff. With this one, I'm taking a much more like systemic approach to managing the focus states. And I'm actually very happy with how it's turning out. Like this is kind of getting to the point where I may actually like pull this into any future games that need controller support, because it's like there's a lot going on, but at the end of the day, the way that it's designed is that this just kind of sits on top of the game, and you can control the individual behaviors by like adding these focus context boundary components. I also have like these focus priority components, which will auto grab focus during appropriate times. So yeah, this may end up being something that I pull into future projects, assuming that I don't spaghettify it too much. Now, the one thing that I do want to do is I probably want to rename this, actually. I'm going to rename this exclude. Let's do is exclusion boundary. Set as exclusion boundary. Set as standard boundary. We're going to rename this to exclusion state changed event handler. And then this is exclusion boundary. Emit signal exclusion state changed, and then we'll go in here, connect to exclusion state changed on boundary exclusion state changed. Rebuild scoped controls deferred. I mean, this should be essentially the same. I just renamed things, but I'm going to rename this to exclusion boundary parents. Find exclusion boundaries. Okay. Let me just give it another quick test to make sure. Oh, I need to rebuild and then re-enable that because I changed the export property name. So I'm going to need to re-enable that. Okay. I'm trying to challenge and force myself to finally master an interpreter language of GDScript, and it's going great, but man, do I miss type safety and stuff coming from Kotlin, C#, Java, and such. Yeah, I feel your pain for sure. I mean, GDScript does have a type system. It's not a very sophisticated type system, but at least it gives you some type safety. I think one of the big weaknesses of it now is though that like you can't really have properly typed arrays and stuff, and like there's some weird issues with it, but I'm pretty confident that as time goes on, GDScript will be filled out with these things like traits and maybe even namespaces in the future. Typed arrays, typed dictionaries. I think that like when it gets up to par with what you'd expect from other typed languages, I think it'll actually be a lot better to use. And the idea of having like type optionality too is pretty nice. Like you can choose to use it or not. Okay. Watching this, I regularly think about switching to C# in my games. I mean, yeah, it's nice. Is there not strong typing in GDScript? There is, yeah, it's just not super good. All right, I'm heading out. Have a great rest of your stream and day. Thank you, Ninja Link. I'm actually going to be heading out right now, too. I think that's a good place to stop on the stream for today. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you for being here. It's very much appreciated, as always. You can wishlist Alchemortis on Steam. The link is in the description below. And also, the Patreon exclusive playtest is running right now. So if you want to get access to the current build of Alchemortis and play it right now, you can click the Join Now button on Patreon. Subscribing at either tier will get you access to the playtest, but subscribing at the top tier for at least 1 month, I will send you an Alchemortis Steam key for the full game when it launches, and your name will be put in the Alchemortis credits as a thank you for supporting the game early. You also get unlimited access to my course content while you're subscribed to this tier. But again, I'm going to reiterate that the playtest will be open to the general public. So for everyone who wants to try Alchemortis, you will have an opportunity to try it. That playtest will be going live in just a couple of days here. So join the Discord, subscribe to the email list, wishlist the game on Steam, and you'll be notified when those things go live for the public. So yeah, I just want to make it perfectly clear, you do not have to pay anything before the game launches to try the playtests. You don't have to pay anything to try the demo. The only time where you will have to pay to get access to Alchemortis is when you want to get the full game on Steam. But during the development phase, the playtests will be available to everyone. It's just that Patreon members get exclusive early access to every playtest build. So anyway, thank you all for watching. Thank you for being here. It's very much appreciated. Thank you for your support. And yeah, I'll talk to you in the next one tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. Okay, bye-bye for now.